The sky splits open. The sky cracked open like a broken promise, and Kara Holloway drove straight into its fury. She had no destination. That was the point. The day before Thanksgiving marked exactly 1 year since she had buried her husband and the daughter she never got to hold. 1 year since the hemorrhage took everything. Staying home meant drowning in silence and sympathy casseroles from neighbors who meant well but couldn't possibly understand. So she drove west, then north, then wherever the road bent. Wyoming's emptiness suited her emptiness. The snow started gentle, almost pretty. Within an hour, it turned vicious. Wind slammed her wagon sideways. Visibility collapsed to nothing. Kara's hands ached from gripping the reins, and her mare stumbled twice on ice hidden beneath white powder. She should have stopped in the last town, should have taken a room, should have done a lot of things differently over the past year. Through the curtain of snow, a light appeared, faint, golden, flickering. A farmhouse, isolated and sturdy, with smoke curling from the chimney. The lamp in the window burned like a small sun against the gray apocalypse of the storm. Kara turned toward it without hesitation. She tied her mare under the barn's overhang, hands trembling from cold, stumbled to the porch, knocked, waited. The door opened, and exhaustion stared back at her. The man was perhaps 30. Perhaps older weariness made age difficult to read. Unshaven. Dark-circled eyes. Shirt sleeves rolled despite the cold. Behind him, a baby's cry pierced the air, sharp and relentless and desperate in the way only infants can manage. He looked at her snow-crusted coat, her chattering jaw, her horse visible through the white chaos behind her. "Roads are already gone," he said. His voice was flat, hollowed out. "You'd best come in." Kara stepped inside. The warmth hit her like a physical blow, and she swayed. The man she didn't even know his name caught her elbow, steadied her, then released her immediately. The baby screamed louder. The house was clean enough but cluttered with evidence of survival rather than living. Dishes in the sink, a basket of laundry half folded, abandoned, a rocking chair near the fire, worn smooth by use. "I'm Jonathan Mercer," he said, already moving toward the crying. "There's coffee on the stove. Help yourself." Kara watched him disappear into the back room. The crying continued, joined now by his low murmuring, words she couldn't make out, soothing sounds that weren't soothing anything. She poured coffee with shaking hands, drank it black and scalding, let it burn away the cold. The crying went on and on. Something deep in Kara's chest cracked open. A fissure she had spent 12 months sealing shut. Her body remembered things her mind had tried to forget the weight of an infant. The particular rhythm that calmed them. The songs that worked when nothing else would. She set down the cup and followed the sound. Jonathan stood in the doorway of a small bedroom, holding a bundle wrapped in faded blue wool. His movements were mechanical bouncing, patting, the same motions repeated without conviction. He looked up when Kara appeared, too tired even for surprise at this stranger invading his home's inner rooms. "She won't settle," he said. Defeat saturated every syllable. 6 months of this. She never settles. Kara's arms opened without her permission. "May I?" Jonathan stared at her. At this woman he'd known for 3 minutes. At her snow-dampened hair and hollow cheeks and eyes that held something he recognized but couldn't name. He handed her the baby. What silence sounds like. The infant weighed almost nothing. 7, maybe 8 pounds of fury and need and tiny clenched fists. Kara settled her against her shoulder in one smooth motion. Muscle memory. Her body knew this dance even though her heart had forgotten the music. She began to rock. Not the stiff bouncing Jonathan had employed, but a deeper sway that started in her hips and flowed upward like water. She hummed. Low. Soft. Barely a sound at all. Just vibration against the baby's cheek. The crying stuttered. Kara kept rocking, kept humming. Her hand moved in slow circles on the tiny back. The room smelled of milk and talcum powder, and the particular sweetness of new life that she had thought. would destroy her to encounter again. It didn't destroy her. It woke something up instead. The crying stopped, in the sudden silence. The storm outside roared louder. Wind rattled the windows. Snow hissed against glass. But inside the small bedroom, everything held still. Jonathan stared at them both. "She's asleep," he whispered, as if the words themselves might shatter the miracle. "She's just tired." Kara kept her voice equally low. "Babies know when you're tense. They feel it." She needed someone calm. "I'm not—" Jonathan started, then stopped. Swallowed whatever defense he'd been constructing. "I used to be calm, before." The word hung in the air between them. Before. Such a small word to contain so much devastation. Kara moved carefully to the wooden cradle in the corner, laid the sleeping infant down with practiced gentleness, tucked the blue wool closer around her, stood watching her breathe for a moment longer than necessary. "She's beautiful," Kara said. "What's her name? Emma, after my—" He stopped again. "Emma." They moved back to the kitchen in silence. Jonathan poured more coffee for both of them. Kara wrapped her hands around the cup, finally feeling warmth return to her fingers. "You're good at that," he said. "Not quite a question, not quite a statement. Something searching in it." Kara's hands trembled against the ceramic. "I used to think I would be—" The past tense settled between them like a third presence. Jonathan's eyes flickered to her left hand, to the pale line where a ring had lived until recently. He didn't ask. Kara didn't offer. Outside. The storm screamed its fury. Inside. Two strangers sat in a kitchen that smelled of coffee and baby powder. Neither speaking. Both understanding that words would only complicate the strange peace they'd accidentally found. Emma slept for 3 hours straight. Jonathan said it was the longest stretch since she'd been born. Kara didn't know whether to feel grateful or terrified. The math of loss, morning light filtered gray through frost-coated windows. The storm hadn't weakened, if anything. The snow fell thicker now. Wind piling drifts against the barn door that climbed to the windows. "Roads won't clear for days," Jonathan said, stating the obvious while he stared out the kitchen window. 3 at least, maybe 4, Kara nodded. She'd slept on the narrow settee in the sitting room, waking twice when Emma cried, listening to Jonathan's footsteps, his murmured attempts at comfort, the eventual silence when he succeeded on his own. She hadn't offered to help in the night. Something about the darkness made it feel too intimate. Now, in gray daylight, she stood in the kitchen doorway watching him prepare a bottle with the clumsy competence of someone who'd learned by necessity rather than instinct. "I could make Thanksgiving dinner," she heard herself say. "Whatever you have in the pantry. Seems wrong to let the day pass unmarked." Jonathan looked at her as if she'd suggested something extraordinary rather than ordinary. "I hadn't thought about it being Thanksgiving. Easy to lose track." "Yeah." He tested the bottle's temperature against his wrist. "Easy to lose track of a lot of things." He disappeared to feed Emma, and Kara explored the kitchen. Found potatoes, a jar of preserved green beans, some salt pork, flour, sugar, a precious tin of cinnamon. Enough for something. Enough to mark the day as different from the ones that came before or after. While her hands worked peeling, chopping. Familiar motions that required no thought. Her eyes wandered the room. The photograph on the mantel drew her attention the way wounds draw fingers irresistibly. Painfully. A woman holding a newborn. Dark hair. Tired smile. Luminous with new mother joy. The date carved into the wooden frame, May 14th, 1885. 6 months ago. Emma was 6 months old. Kara's hand stilled on the potato. The math was simple and devastating. Jonathan found her standing there, knife forgotten, staring at the photograph. She heard him stop in the doorway, felt his presence without turning. "Her name was Mary," he said quietly. "She didn't even get to hold Emma, not while she was alive. They put the baby in her arms after. But his voice fractured. She couldn't feel it. Kara turned to face him. His eyes were dry but ancient, carrying weight no young father should bear. "I'm sorry," she said. The words felt pathetically inadequate. She'd heard them 1,000 times herself. "I know you understand." He crossed his arms, a defensive gesture. "I can see it. Whatever you lost, it's written all over you." Outside, the storm pressed against the house like something trying to get in. Or maybe something trying to keep them sealed together. Two wounded creatures trapped in close quarters with an infant who needed them both. "The potatoes won't peel themselves," Kara said finally, because there was nothing else to say. Jonathan nodded, picked up a knife, stood beside her at the counter. They worked in silence, shoulders almost touching, and let the storm do the talking. The language of care. The second day found its own rhythm. Kara woke before dawn to Emma's fussing and made it to the bedroom before Jonathan fully emerged from sleep. She changed the wet diaper with hands that remembered how, warmed a bottle, settled into the rocking chair by the fire to feed the baby, while first light turned the frost on the windows to diamonds. Jonathan found them there an hour later, stopped in the doorway. Something crossed his face: relief, guilt, longing. Loss too quick for Kara to name before he shuddered it away. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "I know. You should have woken me. You needed sleep more than I needed to be woken." He couldn't argue with that. Dark circles under his eyes had lightened slightly, just from one uninterrupted stretch. Kara wondered how long it had been since he'd slept more than 2 hours at a time. They fell into division without discussion. Kara handled the morning feeding, the midday bathing, the fussy hour before sunset when Emma seemed determined to cry at the unfairness of existence. Jonathan chopped wood, hauled water, kept the fire burning, tended to Kara's mare in the barn. But he kept finding reasons to be in the house, through the frost-edged window. He watched Kara bathe Emma in the basin. Steam rose around them both. Kara's sleeves were pushed past her elbows, her hair coming loose from its pins, and she was singing that same low melody she'd hummed the first night. Emma splashed. Small hands grabbed at soap bubbles. And then something Jonathan hadn't heard in weeks: his daughter laughed. The sound cracked something open in his chest. Kara looked up, saw him watching through the window, and smiled. Not a full smile. Something tentative and fragile, but real. That evening, they prepared supper together, moving around each other in the small kitchen with an ease that should have taken years to develop. Not 2 days. She handed him the salt before he asked for it. He moved the kettle off the heat just as she reached for it. "You've done this before," he said. "The baby things, the house things, all of it." Kara's hands slowed on the bread she was slicing. "I was married for 4 years. Spent most of it hoping." She set down the knife. "The last few months, I thought my hoping had finally been answered." "What happened?" But she shook her head. Not ready. Maybe not ever ready. They ate in companionable quiet. Emma slept in her cradle by the fire, milk-drunk and peaceful. The storm continued its assault outside, but the house held warm and steady. "That song," Jonathan said finally, when the dishes were cleared and they sat with the last of the coffee. "The one you sing to her. What is it?" Kara's cup paused halfway to her lips. "Something my mother used to sing. Something I used to—" She stopped, set the cup down carefully. "Something from before." There it was again. Before. That country they'd both been exiled from. "It's beautiful," he said. "She loves it." "I know." Kara's voice barely rose above a whisper. "I used to sing it to my belly, every night. Telling the baby about all the things we'd do together, all the places we'd go." Her. The baby had been a girl. Jonathan filed that away. Another piece of the puzzle he was slowly assembling. "What happened?" he asked again, softer this time. Kara stood abruptly, gathered the cups, turned her back to wash them in water that had gone cold. Another night, she said. Maybe Thanksgiving for the wounded. The meal was simple. Salt pork and potatoes. Green beans seasoned with the last of the bacon drippings. Biscuits that rose golden in the oven. A small miracle of cinnamon and sugar transformed into something almost like pie. Kara had set the table with care she didn't quite understand. Found a cloth napkin buried in a drawer and smoothed its wrinkles. Positioned the lamp so its light fell warm and golden across the plates. Jonathan carried Emma to the table, holding her against his chest as he ate one-handed. A father's skill, learned through necessity. This is the first Thanksgiving meal I've had since... He stopped. Tried again. Mary loved Thanksgiving. Her favorite holiday. She said it was the only one that asked you to stop and notice what you had. Smart woman. She was. He looked down at Emma. She would have loved being a mother. She was so excited. Talking about first steps and first words and first everything. Making plans. Kara's throat tightened. I made plans too. The silence stretched. Outside. Wind howled. Inside. The lamp flickered once and steadied. His name was Thomas, Kara said suddenly. The words came out rusty, unused. My husband, Thomas Holloway. He was a school teacher. Loved books more than anything except... She paused. Except me, I think, and the baby. Jonathan waited. We tried for 3 years. Everyone had advice, remedies, prayers. Nothing worked. She pushed food around her plate. Then last spring, finally, I started showing in June. By August, I couldn't stop smiling. The storm pressed against the windows. Emma made a soft sound, and Jonathan shifted her to his other arm. The baby came early. Kara continued. Her voice had gone flat, reciting facts rather than living them. November. Something went wrong. Bleeding that wouldn't stop. Thomas rode for the doctor. But the bridge had washed out from rain. He tried to cross anyway. She stopped, breathed, made herself say the rest. They found him downstream. The baby came while I was alone. She didn't breathe. I held her for an hour before anyone came. She was so small, so perfect, so still. Tears ran down her face now, silent and steady. She didn't wipe them away. I'm sorry, Jonathan said. For all of it. I know you are. She finally looked at him. I know you understand. I do. He reached across the table, not quite touching her hand, just close enough that she could feel the warmth. Mary took days. She held on so hard, fought so hard, but there was too much damage. And the doctor didn't get here in time either. Same story. Different details. Same ending. Yeah. His jaw tightened. Same ending. They sat in the wreckage of their separate tragedies, and somehow the sharing made the burden lighter. Not healed, not fixed, just less solitary. Emma began to fuss, and the moment broke naturally. Kara stood to clear the dishes. Jonathan walked the baby around the room, humming tunelessly, without Kara's skill but with equal love. Later, when Emma slept and the lamp burned low, Kara excused herself earlier than necessary. The intimacy of confession had left her raw, exposed. She needed walls between them, even thin ones. Thank you, Jonathan said as she moved toward the sitting room. For the meal. For everything. Thank you for the shelter. That's not... He shook his head. You've given more than shelter back. Kara paused in the doorway. For a moment she almost said something, almost crossed the room. Almost let herself feel something beyond grief. Instead, she nodded once, and disappeared into the shadows. Jonathan sat alone with his daughter, lamp burning low, and realized the house didn't feel empty anymore. The realization terrified him. Fever dreams morning came with crisis. Kara heard Jonathan's sharp intake of breath from the bedroom and was moving before she fully woke. She found him bent over Emma's cradle, hand pressed to the baby's forehead, face white with panic. "She's burning up. Feel her, she's burning." Kara touched Emma's cheek. Warm. Yes. Flushed. But not the raging heat that signaled true danger. She'd seen true danger. This wasn't it. "She has a fever," Kara said calmly. "Babies get fevers. It doesn't mean—" "Don't tell me what it doesn't mean." Jonathan's voice cracked. "Don't tell me she's fine. Everyone told me Mary would be fine. Everyone told me the bleeding would stop. Everyone said—" He broke off. His hands were shaking. 6 months of suppressed terror had found a crack and was pouring through. "Jonathan," Kara kept her voice low and steady. "Look at me." He couldn't. His eyes were fixed on Emma, on the slight flush across her cheeks, on every breath as if counting them would keep them coming. Kara gently moved him aside, picked up Emma, who whimpered but didn't scream, pressed her lips to the small forehead, the oldest thermometer. "It's low grade," she said. "Probably just working on a tooth. We'll cool her down. Keep her comfortable. Watch her close. But she's strong. Jonathan, look at her. She's fighting. I can't lose her too." The words escaped him like a confession, like something shameful. He stood in the middle of the room, this man who had been holding his household together through sheer will, and crumbled. "I can't. I'm not strong enough. If something, sit down." Kara shifted Emma to one arm and guided him to the rocking chair with the other. "Sit. Breathe. Watch." She worked quickly. Cool cloths for Emma's forehead, a lighter blanket, a few drops of sugar water to keep her drinking. The baby fussed but accepted the ministrations, eyes already drooping. Within an hour, the fever had broken. Emma slept peacefully, skin cool, breathing even. Jonathan hadn't moved from the chair. He stared at his daughter like a man who'd seen a ghost depart. "She's fine," Kara said softly. "I told you she was strong. You shouldn't have had to. I should have been able—" "Stop." She knelt in front of him, forcing him to meet her eyes. "You've been doing this alone for 6 months. No sleep, no help. No one to tell you it's going to be all right. Of course you're afraid. Fear is the price of love." Something flickered in his expression, then shuddered away. He stood abruptly, nearly knocking her backward. "I need to check on the animals. Jonathan, thank you for your help." His voice had gone formal, distant, a door slamming shut. "I can manage from here." He pulled on his coat and disappeared into the storm, leaving Kara kneeling on the floor with a sleeping baby and the cold realization that she'd seen something he never meant to show her. The rest of the day passed in careful distance. Jonathan returned, stomped snow from his boots, and busied himself with tasks that kept him on the opposite side of the house. When their paths crossed, he was polite, courteous, remote. Kara recognized the walls. She'd built identical ones herself that evening. She sat by the window watching the storm weaken. Gaps appeared in the clouds. The snow fell lighter now, almost gentle. By morning, the roads might clear. She could leave. Maybe she should leave. Whatever fragile thing had been building between them, he'd made clear he wanted it torn down. She was a stranger who'd stumbled into his grief, useful for a crisis. Nothing more. Her bag sat in the corner, barely unpacked. It wouldn't take long to gather her things. With the child-nosed night settled heavy on the farmhouse, the storm had faded to occasional gusts, and the silence felt loud after 3 days of constant wind. Kara folded her spare dress into her bag, rolled her stockings. checked that her small purse of coins remained tucked in the inside pocket. Mechanical movements, performed by a body that had learned not to feel while it worked. She would leave at first light, thank Jonathan for his hospitality, wish him and Emma well, ride away before anyone had to acknowledge what had almost grown between them. It was the sensible thing to do. From the bedroom, Emma began to cry. Kara paused, listened to Jonathan's footsteps, heard his voice, low and soothing, attempting the comfort that didn't come naturally to him. The crying continued, escalated, became the sharp, desperate wail of an infant who wanted something specific and wasn't getting it. Kara pressed her hands against her thighs, counted breaths, reminded herself that this wasn't her child. This wasn't her house. This wasn't her life. The crying went on. And then she heard Jonathan's voice, cracked with exhaustion and despair. Please, Emma, please. Sweetheart. What do you need? I don't know what you need. Kara was moving before she made the decision. In the bedroom. Jonathan stood in the center of the floor, Emma wailing against his chest. His eyes were red-rimmed, his hands trembled. When he saw Kara in the doorway, something between relief and shame crossed his face. She won't stop. I've tried everything. She won't let me. He handed the baby over, too tired to protest, too desperate to guard himself. Kara settled Emma against her shoulder, began the slow rock, and without meaning to, without choosing to, she began to sing. The lullaby. Her mother's song. The song she'd sung to her own belly every night for 4 months, promising a future that never arrived. The song she thought had died with her daughter. Emma's crying softened, stuttered, stopped. But Kara kept singing. Tears ran down her cheeks as the melody poured out of her grief and love and longing twisted together into something that transcended words. She sang to Emma. She sang to the daughter she'd buried. She sang to all the broken parts of herself she'd thought were beyond repair. Jonathan stood frozen in the doorway. He watched this woman, this stranger the storm had delivered, pour everything she had into comforting his child. Watched her weep silently while she sang. Watched her love Emma with a ferocity that took his breath away. Not because Emma was hers, because Emma needed her. The realization struck him like lightning. Kara wasn't here by accident. The storm hadn't trapped her, it had brought her. She was exactly what his daughter needed. Exactly what his hollow house needed. Exactly what he needed. He stepped into the room, not lingering in the doorway, not watching from a safe distance, present. Kara looked up, song fading, tears still wet on her face. Emma slept peacefully against her chest. Don't, Jonathan said. His voice was rough, raw. Don't leave in the morning. I thought you wanted... I was afraid. He crossed to her, stood close enough to touch, but didn't. I've been afraid for 6 months, afraid of needing help, afraid of feeling something, afraid of... He stopped, gathered himself. Afraid of wanting someone to stay. Kara held his gaze, held his daughter, held everything fragile and frightening about this moment. I'm afraid too, she whispered. I've been running from grief for a year, telling myself if I kept moving, it couldn't catch me. Did it work? No. She almost smiled. It just meant I was alone when it found me anyway. The storm breathed its last gusts against the windows. The lamp flickered. Emma sighed in her sleep. Stay, Jonathan said. Please. Just stay. The words that build houses. Morning arrived in shades of gold and blue. Kara woke to silence, the particular silence of snow-covered land and cleared skies. She lay still on the settee, watching light move across the ceiling, feeling something unfamiliar settling in her chest. Hope. Terrifying. Impossible hope. She hadn't left. Jonathan's plea still echoed in her memory. raw and real. But daylight had a way of making nighttime confessions seem like fever dreams. Maybe he'd changed his mind. Maybe he'd been tired, vulnerable, not meaning half of what he'd said. She rose, dressed, found coffee already warm on the stove. Through the window, she saw Jonathan standing on the porch, shoulders straight, breath fogging in the cold air. He was watching the horizon, where the road emerged from snowdrifts. Leading away toward the rest of the world, Kara poured 2 cups and carried them outside. He turned at the sound of the door, took the offered cup. His fingers brushed hers, and neither pretended it was accidental. "Storms passed," she said. "Roads will be clear by noon." They stood side by side, watching the world reappear from beneath its white blanket. Everything glittered, crystalline and new, as if the blizzard had scrubbed creation clean and left only beauty behind. "I meant what I said," Jonathan said quietly. "Last night. All of it. Even in daylight. Especially in daylight." He turned to face her. "Kara, I've been surviving for 6 months. Not living. Just surviving. Getting through each day because Emma needed me to get through each day. But these past 3 days," he stopped, set down his coffee cup on the porch railing, took hers and set it aside too. "You're a natural with her," he said. "I saw it the first night. The way you held her, the way she calmed for you. I told myself it was just skill, competence, nothing personal. But I watched you sing to her last night." His voice thickened. "I watched you cry while you sang, pouring out enough love to heal an army. And I realized you're not just good with babies. You're good with her. With Emma. You love her." Kara's eyes burned. "I tried not to. Why? Because loving her means staying. And staying means—" She faltered. "Staying means risking everything again. Opening up to loss again. I buried a husband and a daughter in the same week. I don't know if I have the strength to survive that twice." Jonathan stepped closer, close enough that she could feel his warmth even through the cold air. "I understand," he said. "I thought the same thing. Easier to stay numb, safer to stay alone. But Kara—" His hand came up, tentative, hovering near her cheek without quite touching. "These 3 days have reminded me what it feels like to be alive. To have someone in the house who sees Emma's first smile and shares it. To have someone who knows what I've lost because they've lost the same." His palm finally settled against her face. Gentle. Reverent. "You're not broken," he said. "Neither of us is. We're just reconstructing. And maybe we could reconstruct together." Kara leaned into his touch. Tears spilled over. But they weren't grief this time. They were something closer to release. "I thought I'd never hold a child again without breaking," she whispered. "When I held Emma that first night, I expected it to destroy me, but it didn't." "What did it do?" "It woke something up." She covered his hand with hers. "Something I thought had died. Turns out it was just waiting." Jonathan kissed her then. Gentle, careful. A question more than a statement. She answered. When they finally drew apart, both breathing unsteadily. He rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he said. "Not because of the storm, because this house hasn't felt like home since Mary died. Because my daughter looks for you when you leave the room. Because—" His voice cracked. "Because I look for you, too." Kara pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. She saw fear there. Still. Vulnerability. The courage it took to ask for something after losing everything. She saw herself. "I wasn't going anywhere," she said. "I just didn't know it yet. Where all roads lead." Kara unpacked her bag properly for the first time. She hung her spare dress in the wardrobe beside Jonathan's shirts, placed her hairbrush on the bureau, set her small Bible on the nightstand, where it would stay. Small acts, enormous meaning. In the kitchen, Jonathan was attempting breakfast. The smell of slightly burnt bacon drifted through the house, accompanied by his good-natured muttering. Emma sat in her wooden high chair, banging a spoon against the tray and babbling at nothing in particular. Kara paused in the doorway, watching. This was domestic life. This was the future she'd been promised and had lost. This was what she'd been running from for a year, not because she didn't want it, but because wanting it hurt too much. It still hurt. Perhaps it always would. But the hurt had company now. Hope lived alongside it. Joy was learning to grow in grief's shadow. "You're burning the eggs," she said, stepping into the kitchen. Jonathan looked up, grinning despite the smoking pan. "I'm creating a new recipe. Charred eggs. Very fashionable back east." "Liar." "Absolutely." He surrendered the spatula gratefully. "My talents lie elsewhere, such as chopping wood, fixing fences, looking ruggedly handsome in the morning light." Kara laughed. The sound surprised her, full and genuine and free. She couldn't remember the last time she'd laughed like that. Emma shrieked in delight at the sound, waving her spoon. Kara scooped her up, settling her on one hip while rescuing the eggs with her free hand. "Multitasking," Jonathan observed. "Another of your many gifts." "I had good teachers." They ate breakfast together at the small table, Jonathan's knee pressed against hers beneath the worn wood. Emma gummed a piece of soft biscuit, getting crumbs everywhere. Outside, the world sparkled white and gold. The road was visible now, a clear line cutting through the snow toward the horizon. Kara could see all the way to where it disappeared over a rise, leading to towns and trains and other lives. She felt nothing when she looked at it. No pull. No longing to run. "I was thinking," Jonathan said, setting down his coffee cup, "that we might go into town when the roads are properly clear. Let people know." He hesitated. "Let people know that things have changed, that you're staying." "As what?" The question hung between them. They hadn't discussed specifics, hadn't named what they were becoming. "As family," Jonathan said simply. "However that looks, whatever form it takes, you don't have to marry me tomorrow. You don't have to marry me ever, if that's not what you want. But Emma needs you. I need you. And if I'm not completely misreading things, maybe you need us too." Kara looked at him this weary. Gentleman who had opened his door to a stranger and found himself opening his heart as well. She looked at Emma, who was smearing biscuit crumbs into her hair with great concentration. She looked at the house around them, with its worn furniture and warm fire and photographs that honored the past without imprisoning the future. "I'd like that," she said. "Family, whatever form it takes." Jonathan's smile broke across his face like sunrise. He reached across the table and took her hand, and Emma squealed as if approving the arrangement. Later, when breakfast was cleared and Emma napped, they stood together on the porch. The air was cold and clean, and the world stretched out before them in every direction. "I didn't know where I was going when the storm hit," Kara said. "I'd been driving for hours without any destination, just running. Running from grief. Running from hope. I think grief I understood. Hope felt dangerous." Jonathan pulled her close, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "And now," she leaned into him, felt his heartbeat steady against her side, watched the sunlight turn the snow to diamonds. "Now I think the storm knew exactly where to take me." She smiled. "Sometimes you have to get lost before you can find home." The road stretched clear to the horizon. Neither of them looked at it. Behind them, the lamp in the window had been extinguished, no longer needed to guide travelers through darkness. Ahead of them lay whatever life chose to offer: joy and sorrow, struggle and peace, ordinary days and extraordinary love. Emma's cry drifted from inside. Not distress, just a baby waking up, ready for whatever came next. Kara turned toward the sound. Jonathan's hand found hers. They walked back into the house together. The blizzard had taken 3 days. In return, it gave them the rest of their lives.